what we call Freight Facilities Inventory Interactive Map. So a lot of the information from our study we decided to put online. We created an ArcGIS interactive map. This is just a screen capture on there, but there is a link to it as part of the slides. So a lot of the information that we have in here, we do include on this. So for example, what are the locations of some of the manufacturing facilities or warehouses, distribution centers, some of the intermodal and at-grade rail that we try to incorporate all of this into this map. You can turn the different layers on and off. So you can see what some of those aspects of freight are in our region. I also mentioned we look at trends. A lot of them are based on what's going on at the Port of Virginia. It is the third highest port in the East Coast in terms of the amount of containerized cargo that it holds or that it carries. I do want to note, though, that when you look back to the pandemic through 2024, the Port of Virginia does have the highest growth rate of all the East Coast ports. So higher than Savannah, higher than Charleston, higher than New York. And that's been the case really over the last few years, where we're seeing the growth at the port here exceeding what we see at the other East Coast ports. As part of this, also, we do highlight one of the biggest challenges we see when it comes to freight movement, and that's related to truck parking. A lot of the information we include in the study is based on an effort that VDOT undertook over the last few years. The most recent report they released was in 2024, so a lot of the information, like I said, comes from that study. But there is a deficiency of truck parking both across the country, both across Virginia, but also in Hampton roads. Based on their study, we already have a deficit of about 330 spaces today, where trucks need to be able to park, but spaces aren't available, so they have to park on the side of the road, on interstate ramps, businesses, things like that. Places that may not necessarily be safe, both for the driver and also the inventory that they're carrying. As part of the study, though, they did look out to the year 2045, and that increases to over 1,000 spaces each and every day that will be deficient, that we won't have, that we need to accommodate truck parking here in our region. I mentioned we looked at commodity flow data. This is released by a firm called Transearch, Transearch. There's many different things you can look at in terms of the various commodities that go into and out of our region, both existing and in the future for the year 2045. I'm just showing one example that we were able to produce using that data, and that's just showing the amount of tonnage throughout the state of Virginia in the year 2045. So we're able to use this information when we look at future volumes, both into the commodities going in and out of our region and what routes they are expected to carry into, out, and throughout our region. When we look at the regional truck movements and bottlenecks section, there's many different things we look at. One of them is truck travel on Hampton Road. So what is the total amount of truck travel and how has that changed through the years? We look more specifically at the gateways to our region, which I'll show on the next slide. We also look specifically by location. So we have about 300 locations throughout the region where we have truck count data. So we show that on the maps and show. We dig into the congestion cost experience by trucks and also freight bottlenecks. That's one of the biggest things we look at, is where the bottlenecks are for freight movement in our region. So just starting with the gateways, there's about 20,000 trucks that go into and out of our region each and every day. And as you can see, that's grown almost 20% if you go back over the last decade. Not surprisingly, I-64 is the gateway that carries the most truck traffic into and out of our region, at about 7,300 trucks a day that go in and out. Second highest is Route 58 at about 4,600, and then Route 460 at about 2,500 a day. If you look at that split, once again, I-64 is the highest. About 36% of the trucks that go in and out of our region use that route. But if you look at Route 58 and 460 combined, they generally equal out what I-64 carries. And even in some recent years, we've seen that combination of 58, 460 carry more trucks combined than 64 does. As these major developments, such as Port 460, get developed out in Suffolk and Isle of Wight in that direction, we really think we'll see more of a shift even from that, and maybe see 58, 460 carry a significantly higher share of the amount of trucks in and out of our region than we're seeing today. When we looked at our freight bottleneck analysis, we did it a couple different ways. One, we wanted to look at what the average truck delay was. So if you're the truck driver driving down the road and you're stuck at the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, how much delay are you experiencing? And we can measure that through the average truck delay. We also do it through total delay, so that's kind of the network perspective. If we look at the HRTPO, how much truck delay is there? And that total truck delay per mile will tell you that measure there. Just to show you an example, I'm showing total truck delay, both here on the peninsula, and the next slide will be on the south side, just so you can see those facilities, where the biggest bottlenecks are in terms of truck movement. On the peninsula, really no surprise, HRTPO and Monitor Merrimack are the two biggest bottlenecks for truck movement. We do see some delays also on Jefferson Avenue and Route 17 through Newport News and York County, but HRTPO and Monitor Merrimack are by far the two highest. Looking at the south side, though, you see much more truck delay, and it's in various corridors. It's not just the interstate system, although we do see those, particularly on 664 and also at the downtown tunnel, for example, but also Hampton Boulevard. We see excessive truck delays throughout the entire corridor from the Midtown Tunnel almost up to NIT, for example. If you look out in Suffolk, Route 460, Route 58, both, we experience very high truck delay volume amounts out there, for example. So you can see Western Freeway is another example approaching the Midtown Tunnel. So we do have many areas throughout the region where this truck delay is occurring. I do want to mention, with Dale's presentation, and she mentioned prioritization, all this data that you're seeing in terms of these truck delays was incorporated into that. So that is how we incorporate some of this data from the study into our other transportation planning processes. Last thing I want to mention is we also drilled down into some what we're calling high profile corridors in the region, just to see what the total amount of truck delay was there, and then put a cost amount to it. So what is the trucking industry, what are they incurring in terms of total congestion costs at some of these facilities? So looking in our region, the highest cost high profile corridor was the Bridge Tunnel. So each and every day, about $7 million is incurred by the trucking industry in terms of congestion costs. So that's lost time, lost productivity, things like that. So that's $7 million each and every weekday that comes out of the trucking industry pocket. When you think about that, that's the type of thing that makes our region less competitive for the trucking industry, and maybe various reasons why freight might move, let's say, to Savannah or Charleston, if they're incurring less cost because of that. Second was the high-rise bridge. I did want to note that this data is from right before the opening was completed, so I'm sure when we get the newer data, it'll be lower than what you see there. But third highest was Holland Road in Suffolk, so even higher than the Monitor Merrimack, higher than the Midtown Tunnel, for example. Route 58 in Suffolk had the third highest congestion costs for the trucking industry, which I found very interesting to see. So in terms of this report, as I mentioned, we did go through our Freight Transportation Advisory Committee throughout the entire process of this study. They did provide their approval at their December meeting, and then we got the approval of the TTAC here at the February meeting. In terms of review, any comments that we got as part of the review process, we made sure to incorporate. And so the final report that was included with today's agenda does include all of the feedback from the various committees and as well as the review period. So with that, I guess I will not be recommending approval since we don't have a quorum, but otherwise I'll open it up and see if anybody has any questions on the freight study.
Before we open it up, I would like to, we're fortunate to have the advisory commission chair here, Ms. P. Woodlake. Do you have any comments that you'd like to make, sir?
Well, I'll say that I will first of all want to thank the staff because they put in a tremendous amount of effort. And then we have been very robustly involved in trying to find a good balance between number of projects and biggest bang for the buck, not simply for the freight movements, but also for related passenger movements. Because the trucks are moving and we're not in the way of everybody else. And we did narrow it down quite successfully, and I'd just like to thank everybody again for all the hard work that they put in.
Thank you. Mr. Shepherd.
Yeah, I was kind of curious. The subject of this is the regional freight study. And a while back, first kind of came to my mind was that we were looking at barging freight out of here as opposed to just trucking it out. And was that not considered? Is it insignificant now? Because we were supposed to be barging, I think, up towards Washington, somewhere up in that area, and somehow Richmond or whatever. But that was the way to get the trucks off the road. 20,000 trucks a day. That's a bunch.
Yeah, and we do discuss that in the study. Obviously, for the sake of time, I didn't drill down to that today, but the barge services do still exist. There's the I-64 Express that goes between the Port of Virginia and the Richmond Marine Terminal, and that goes on a daily basis carrying freight between Hampton Roads port facilities and Richmond. There's also a barge called the Columbia service that goes up to Chesapeake Bay toward Baltimore and Philadelphia that carries freight, once again, on containers between Hampton Roads and those two locations. So we do describe those in the study. I think the total barge percentage is generally about 3 to 4% of the amount of freight that gets carried into and out of the Port of Virginia. So it's not a hugely significant amount, but it is growing with the additional service.
Any other discussion?
I have a question. Is there any consideration on when Interstate 87? Is
There is a
that
whole section in the study on I-87, actually, yes. We're talking about the various aspects where that's at, some of the issues with that. We also looked at Route 58 in terms of improving that to a freeway facility, limited access facility, and a couple other routes, things like that. But we do have extensive sections in there talking specifically about those corridors, how they would impact freight movement, what the pros and cons, things like that.
One of the things I do appreciate from this study is that there's someone looking at this issue of parking for trucks, because I know on a local level, we hear it from our citizens often, and I honestly never had much of an answer other than there's not much we can do, but at least we know now that they're looking at and understanding the problem.
And I do want to mention the Freight Transportation Advisory Committee. At our meeting yesterday and previous meetings, there have been robust discussions on truck parking, and that's going to continue here at future meetings throughout the year, talking about the issues.
It really is good to know. Again, it kind of points out, Mr. Crum, the importance of this organization, solving problems at a local level, at a regional level for all of our localities. So really appreciate what you're doing there. Any further discussion on this item? Next is our General Assembly update. Mr. Crum. I will say I'm glad you're doing this, not me.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We just approached crossover at the Virginia General Assembly this past week. So both the Senate and the House debated bills and proposals that were introduced in their chambers, and those items that were approved by either the Senate or the House have now crossed over to the other chamber. With us having passed crossover, we are staring at Budget Sunday coming up this Sunday, where we'll start to get an idea of some of the potential proposals that will be considered as the General Assembly proceeds with budget negotiations. I thought it would be a real good time to brief the HRTPO board on where we stand with some of our initiatives that were introduced at the General Assembly session that relate to our regional legislative priorities related to transportation. So I'll start this by saying that there's good news and there's bad news. And as you can imagine, I know you're in contact with your local legislative liaisons. I see many of you in the halls at the General Assembly, and as we all work to advocate for things that will help the Hampton Roads region. So with that, let's jump on in and review a couple of. I have about 5 items that I wanted to review with you today. There's going to be a broader update at the HRPDC today that will go around a number of topic areas, but this presentation for the TPO will focus solely on some transportation issues. Okay, so the request from the HRTPO board that the General Assembly create a primary and secondary road fund. Delegate Jackie Glass once again introduced the same bill that was introduced the last session. As you recall, last year that bill passed the House, that bill passed the Senate, and it was vetoed by the governor last year. Delegate Glass filed the exact same bill this year. That bill was assigned to the House Appropriations Committee. Unfortunately, the House Appropriations Committee decided it was not docketed. It was not placed on the agenda. So it was left in the House Appropriations Committee. What that means in real terms is the bill fails. There's not a companion on the Senate side, so it did not cross over. So our primary, secondary, and road fund bill for the second straight year was not advanced. This is very disappointing. Obviously, I know this is an important priority of this board. You've heard us speak before at this podium about our region having over $3 billion worth of primary and secondary road fund needs. I'm very grateful to Delegate Glass, who once again was a great champion for us. We put on the full court press. I reached out to many of your CAOs, and your CAOs contacted with your legislative people, key legislators, to try to get this bill aired, but unfortunately that did not occur. So our primary and secondary road fund bill, it's not good news, but it did not cross over, and we didn't need to get this taken up next session again based on your direction. Okay.
I got a question on this one.
Yes, please.
Why did it fail?
So, Mr. Shepherd, that's a difficult one for me. I guess all I can report as your staff member is that it was not placed on the docket. We reached out to Delegate Torian's office on multiple occasions. Delegate Torian's office also heard from a number of local governments in this room. The business community was supporting this bill. The Hampton Roads Chamber was supporting this bill. Mr. Bellamy, I thank you. I know you were in there on it, and several of you. Our legislative liaisons were weighing in. So, Mr. Shepherd, I can't answer the why. We were quite surprised.
So we're trying to figure out what we can do next year to make a difference.
Mr. Shepherd, I'll make I was going to wait till the end, but I'll go ahead and say now, this is just simply my opinion. You know, we're a transportation organization. This bill became about flooding, became about school needs, it became about a lot of different things, and we did it solely for the purpose of trying to get it through and signed by the governor. And twice it does not happen. I suggest that we all start thinking about next year, if we do decide to present this as a request, that we get back focused simply on transportation and a funding request for it as well. If we're not going to get it, we may as well not get what we really need instead of what we're asking for to try to appease anyone. Just my opinion. I'm sorry, Mr. Crump, go ahead.
No, and we will be looking, obviously following the direction of this board and the PDC board on how you'd like to proceed next session. And perhaps, an opportunity with the CAOs to strategize that as well as we go in the last year. So yes, we were very hopeful this year. We were optimistic, and now what I'm going to recommend is that at our July board meetings that we think about inviting in all of our General Assembly Hampton Roads Caucus to join us at the July meeting, give them a little bit of time to wrap up this session, and it's going to be ready to gear up for the next session already, and maybe that would give an opportunity, Mr. Chairman, for some of the conversation on some of those options. Okay. All right, so let's move on to a couple of other items that are happening. HJ 28. HJ 28 would create a 13-member joint subcommittee consisting primarily of General Assembly members, but would also include a couple of representatives from this board. And that committee would be charged with studying public transit within the Hampton Roads region for HRT, for WADA, and for Suffolk Transit. It addresses all three transit systems. The language speaks to making certain that we are positioned operationally and from a funding perspective to provide the type of transit system that our three transit systems all want to be able to provide, to look at what that funding structure might look like, and to even look at some cost saving measures. So this joint resolution HJ 28 has passed the House. So it's been approved by the House. It has crossed over to the Senate. Let's see, in the Senate, it's been assigned to Senate Transportation Committee. So we will, it was introduced by Delegate Askew from Virginia Beach. Mr. Chairman, would it be okay, Mr. Harrell, I know that your team has been following this very closely. Mr. Chairman, would it be all right if we maybe ask for some comments from our transit agencies?
Oh, thank you very much. And interestingly enough, Noel Pinker, who represents HRT, is in Richmond now, and HG
HJ 28 is being heard in the Senate Transportation Committee this afternoon. We were scheduled to meet on some other issues. So it is actively moving. We believe this is a strategic look for the region in terms of how we can have a collaborative system with our neighbors. It's creating options, discussion points. Localities obviously have the authority to make decisions if they're interested in. But this is important because, as you well know, transportation supports the regional economic fabric of this region. And certainly this, we believe, will help position us with information for further consideration. Thank you.
And if I may note, Mr. Chairman, it's my understanding this proposal was modeled after the same approach Northern Virginia used, Mr. Harrell, I believe, 2 years ago, which resulted in their pathway to some increased funding. So I believe it was modeled based on the Northern Virginia.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Is there a analysis at what this would cost and what the funding source would be?
At this point, there are no funding sources. The fiscal impact statement, there's no taxes. It's a study. The legislation says, Mr. Harrell, please spot check me on this, but the legislation, I believe, says that the study must happen for under $50,000.
Yes, so there'll be a lot of staff contributions because in terms of consulting dollars, that's not a lot. So I think certainly, and I'm looking over at my friend from Waynesburg, if we need to help pony up to help support the study as well as Suffolk, we certainly will. The key is you want a body of work that can help us advance transit in a structural way in this region.
It does require our board, the HRTPO, to provide support to this study. So there would be a cost impact for our organization, and that's something that Dr. Parthasarathi and I will have to include in our upcoming work program for the next fiscal year. I think that if I may, Mr. Chairman, it might be helpful to hear from WADA as well, if their leader would like to provide any comments on the proposal, because it's important to stress that it does include all three of our transit systems.
Thank you. I appreciate HRT's leadership in getting this through the assembly, or at least up to this point. And support. I was happy to see how it kind of morphed into what it is, because the original approach is so important, especially with, having discussed the long-range transportation plan. We had a study like this would be very important to continue in that effort.
Mr. Chairman, I believe one more question.
I know this is going to sound kind of stupid, but I was sitting here thinking these bills pop up like mushrooms sometimes in the subject. You never know when it's going to pop up, when it's going to hit a nerve. And this one goes to the WADA and HRT. There's a bill up there right now. I think it's a Senate bill, and I don't know the name of it, but it deals with the issue of it ties to the issue of affordable housing, and where I know the cities that have invested a considerable amount of money in public transportation. You're kind of stuck with this, okay? If it ends up. Places like York County, which we only have WADA up in the northern piece of it, which leaves a huge hunk of our county not without transportation. It's going to be tied to whether you actually have to do what they tell you to do at the General Assembly, because it's isolating the issue of multiple high density housing in a jurisdiction that has public transportation. So what I'm saying is, we need to go take a look at that. And I wish I could tell you. We could probably send you a note to tell you which one it is. But if that's the case, I'm sitting here thinking, why do I want to do that when I don't want to jam a bunch of houses in New York County and have public transportation come down to that part of it? You see what I'm saying? There's an issue here that fights against public transportation for places that don't have it. So I'm just laying that out there. It's something that might be of interest because it affects you guys. It affects several other jurisdictions here.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, sort of a preview for the HRPDC meeting. It starts at 12:30, but We will be giving a broad General Assembly update. One of our updates will be on bills related to housing. There are, as Mr. Shepherd mentioned, there are several bills that have a goal of creating an increased housing inventory within local governments. One of them in particular requires over a 5-year period a goal of each locality being required to increase housing stock by 7.5%. We'll be talking about those bills in a little over an hour at the HRPDC meeting because some of them obviously are very much of interest to our local governments related to local land use authority. So yes, we'll be reviewing some of those a little later today. Okay. All right, let's move on to the next one. A little bit of good news on our bike walk trails. We're very pleased that there is a budget amendment that has been submitted. It would provide $2.5 million that would be used towards helping construct the Virginia Capitol Trail into downtown Williamsburg. You're all aware that the Cap Trail now, before we call it Trail 757, stops in the Jamestown area. We've been working with Mr. Trivett and Mr. Stevens on routing and how we move that trail into Williamsburg. The $2.5 million wouldn't pay for all of it, but it would be able to be combined with other monies that the localities are already working on to really achieve a nice extension of the trail into downtown Williamsburg. So we'll be following that budget amendment. It's been filed on both the House side and the Senate side, which is good news. And we'll follow that as it proceeds through the budget process. So we're really excited about that possibility. And it sets the stage for us to go back next year. One of the things that I'd like us all to think about for next year, if we can get this one done into Williamsburg, then let's start focusing on next bites out of the apple on both Trail 757 and the Southside Hampton Roads Trail. So I think we can keep this momentum going. Dr. Parthasarathi and I had a great meeting yesterday with the new Secretary of Transportation. One of the things that we shared with the Secretary was our plans about our regional trail network. I think Vithra and I both left that meeting very encouraged about how excited he was of the plan that we showed him. So for both Peninsula and South Side, I think we have an opportunity to do some progress here in the coming year. So looking forward to that. Okay, Regional Infrastructure and Fiscal Readiness Framework. HRTPO board member Delegate Benita Anthony filed this bill. It's House Bill 1241. Delegate Anthony submitted this bill in response to the conversation that happened at this table in October. You heard some conversation at this HRTPO board meeting in October about the need to think about if we're going to increase taxes in Hampton Roads more, whether it's a sales tax, whether it's real estate, whether it's some other source. And if we're going to create a fund to build additional infrastructure like primary and secondary roads, what many of you talked about was that we have funding needs in roads, primary and secondary roads. We have funding needs in flood prevention. Some of you talked about funding needs in public transit. Others talked about school construction and some of the other issues that Mayor West and Chair West talked about earlier. Delegate Anthony presented and we circulated to you at your November meeting a proposal for a Hampton Roads Regional Infrastructure Framework. You forwarded that proposal onto your chief administrative officers. Your CAOs reported back to you last month on this proposed framework. And with all of that input, Delegate Anthony submitted House Bill 1241. What HB 1241 would do is, it's been modified. It's not as broad as it was, but it says that what we need to do is create an inventory around all of our transportation project needs. And as Dale just showed you, we've done that. We have that inventory and we prioritize in the transportation space. In fact, We prioritize so well that the state smart scale system is based on our regional prioritization process. And what this bill says is we have to do the same thing for flooding projects, and we have to do the same thing for transit projects. Now, we do transit as well in our prioritization scores, but here's what it requires us to do different. It requires us to then sequence the priority of these projects across all three of those topic areas. And there aren't many communities that have done this. Okay, so, trying to put a value on, do you do a primary and secondary road, or do you do a flood prevention or mitigation project, or is it public transit? That's going to be complicated about how you prioritize. This bill requires us to do that, submitting an interim report by this November, but doing a final report in November of 2027 to the General Assembly. HB 1241 flew through the House. It flew through subcommittee, it flew through the main committee, it flew through the full House, and HB 1241 is now over in the Senate. We will continue to follow it through that process. Now, one of the things that we are watching very carefully with this, at present, there is no funding to help us do this work. No funding to help us do this work. So we have brought that up. We are working some various options. One of them is the Community Flood Preparedness Fund that has $90 million in it, and we think this would be a good source to take that money where we could do the prioritization around flooding with our transportation funding money and come together and really do a good job of preparing this framework. So we will continue to follow this bill as it makes its way through. So, Mr. Chairman, those are the main things that I wanted to mention today. Obviously, budget conferees will start getting together in March. The session is scheduled to conclude on March the 14th. But as we all know, in the most recent past, those dates have been extended the last couple of years. But we'll continue to follow these things through and provide another report back to the HRTPO board in March. So I'll respond to any questions, sir.
Thank you. And before I open the for questions, we already had some discussion, but I just want to thank you, Mr. Cron. I know you spent a lot of time up in Richmond fighting for us, and I think that we are to look at some way of getting a little some more lobbyists up there so that you could spend your time running this organization. But do appreciate what you've done. Any other discussion on these items? Okay. Yes, sir. A question for Mr. Cronin. The CAO group and then this group made certain recommendations pertaining to 1241. Off the top of my head was a narrowing of the scope, extension of the timeline, and the money. Based on what I heard you say, Mr. Crum, one of those three recommendations was incorporated into the bill.
Yes, if I may, Mr. Wheeler, you're great question. So first, the time frame. The first version of the bill would require us to have a final report submitted November of 26. And we said that was not practical, and the CAO said, we can't do that. So that one was addressed. We got another year. So that one was addressed. Secondly, the CAO said it's just too broad, right? You can't do roads and flooding and transit and schools and there were even airports in the first version. Airports were removed, schools were removed, but transit was kept in. So the bill was narrowed, but it still is a little broader than what the CAOs and your board asked for. So we now have roads, primary and secondary roads, we have flooding, and we have transit. So it's down to those three items. The final item was the CAO said very strongly, no money, no study. As clearly as I could say it. We have been conveying that very, very directly. Greg Grudendorf has been up there with me. We've been getting that message around, and that's why now that this bill is crossed over, we are going to state leadership saying we are going to need money to do this work. So if I may expand upon that, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Wheeler. So let's be honest, if you all get an Army Corps study, a 3x3x3 study, to study flooding in one locality, you get $3 million to do that study over a 3-year period. Okay, we're going to do this study for 17 local governments. We've got to do it in less than 20 months. And we're letting them know we're going to need 1.5 million to do that work, because we're going to have to call in a consultant, we're going to have to call in a staff person, we're going to have to resource up to be able to do this. So we've been very clear, we're going to need $750,000 for each year to do this work. We think the Community Flood Preparedness Fund is a good place to look for this money, and we're trying to, we keep expressing that concern, Mr. Wheeler, about funding, as identified by the CAOs and the board, and we'll keep driving that point home.
Mr. Chairman, just real quick, I guess, you hit a nerve here. Why did they include, well, two things. When I was in the Pentagon, it was all saying, you want it bad, you get it bad, right? So if they want to push the thing, we'll give them whatever they get, right? Second, if they don't pay for it, they're going to probably get nothing. The other part in this is environment. We talk about flooding, we hear about flooding, but a big thing in our future eventually will be how much we're spending on DMPs and stuff like that. And that's part of infrastructure. And we got we got to take the Chesapeake Bay Act and all that. We're still going to do that. So they not even include that.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Shepherd, I think it's a great point that from our perspective, when Greg's team has started the inventory of flood mitigation projects, they include nature-based solutions. If we look at the great work Hampton's done, the city of Hampton and some of Hampton's work on resiliency, a lot of nature-based solutions, it's going to take a combination of nature-based and hardened solutions to really avoid this future flooding. So, Mr. Shepherd, I think how we're going to approach it, if we can get the funding, is looking collectively at all of those things, because they aren't integrated. So I think it's a good point.
I think that concludes our discussion on legislative matters. We'll go to item 9, CPD update. Mr. Stan?
Yes, sir. At our meeting on Tuesday, we finalized tap selections by both the TPO here and also my selections. They appear on 5F of your agenda, those selections. There's another whole group of Tidewater's Hampton Roads selections that have been selected, but they have not been published yet. They're done by at-large members as a whole, as a group. We had $11 million in the TPO and CTB funding this year. That was, again, those projects appear in 5G of your agenda. So, just our report.
Thank you, Mr. Stan. Thank you for what you do. Next is our VDOT update. Ms. Hollins-Putnam.
Good morning, everyone. Mr. Davis sent his regards today. He wanted me to share that he's working with the TPO staff to schedule a time where he can brief the board on the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel and other major projects in the area. But I also wanted to share that we are ramping up for round 7 of Smart Scale. And those pre-applications open up on March the 2nd and it ends on April 1st. We are currently working with your technical staff and making recommendations for applications. So I just wanted to share that today. Thank you.
Thank you. Go to our transit agencies, Mr. Harrell.
Good afternoon. Well, not quite, I guess. Anyway, just 2 brief items. We had our Transit Advocacy Day on February 2nd. That was delayed due to the snowstorm the week before. I certainly want to thank many of you were there. Certainly want to thank our staff and partners for being part of that. And a special thanks to Bob Crum for his leadership in assisting in our planning efforts and meeting with legislators. Finally, HRT received $850,000 in federal funding to expand its paratransit fleet which is our most vulnerable population. So we're very proud of that. The appropriations bill was sponsored by Representative Bobby Scott and certainly supported by our Virginia senators. This funding will help renew and grow our paratransit fleet, which we've seen a 7% increase from 2024 to 2025. So thank you all for the opportunity to address these items. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Wada, Mr. Glenn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. He didn't say specifically, but I will echo what he implied, Mr. Harold implied, and that is I don't like the snow and ice anymore as I used to. So happy to perhaps have this cold weather past us. Wada North Transit Center is scheduled to open this Sunday, as I've updated you all on before. So very excited for that. As such, it will require us to reroute 4 of our routes. So that will be going out for public comment within the next month. We also, Mr. Harold mentioned just the vulnerable population using our paratransit service. As we continue to see that population grow, we do have 2 new paratransit buses on order with expected delivery this summer. So really, see if we can match the demand. And then lastly, March 4th is the closing of our bus art contest in celebration of the semi-quincentennial. So if you are a resident or know a resident of the Genesee County, Williamsburg, or York County, please have them check out our website or social media to enter this contest. 3 different categories: amateur, aspiring, and professional artists. But in just a few months' time, we'll have 3 buses celebrating our nation's 250th driving around our area. Thank you.
Good news, thank you. Next, our Freight Advisory Commission, Mr. Yes, sir?
Well, not too much to add to the comments that I already gave related to the freight study, but we do have 2 new members coming on, and we'll be seeking approval from the board next meeting, I think it is.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for that update. Military liaisons, we have Mr. Chase Rodriguez from the Coast Guard.
Hi, good morning.
Ms. Chase, I'm sorry, I apologize.
I get it a lot.
All I had to do was look left and I did. Sorry.
Hi, everyone. Chase Rodriguez. If I haven't met you, I work over at Second Virginia under the Captain of Port, Captain Peggy Britton. I'm in the Waterways Management Division. I work under Lieutenant Commander Dustin Strathfield. So if you guys don't have our contact, I'd be happy to stick around and give that to you guys. So from the Waterways update, we've been addressing some of the known ice impacts from this past winter season. I'm sure everyone's well aware of the navigational impacts that were caused by the low temperatures, and then considering the weather didn't pick back up after that, the ice just stuck around. So we were able to survey conditions as able, and we've had some AIDS navigations displaced due to shallow water and these ice impacts. If your constituents are reaching out with these concerns, I'd be happy to field some of them and get in touch with them. Additionally, we are continuing to monitor the weather conditions. We've had some multiple short duration water closures at the Capes due to high gale force winds. Just keeping mariner safety in mind. If it gets to that gale force winds, it does pose a severe navigational risk. So hoping that didn't impact any kind of commercial traffic too much, but keeping navigational safety at the forefront of our minds. We have been pretty cognizant of those, and we'll continue to do those weather closures as we see necessary. And that's all I have to ask. Any questions?
Thank you for what you do. We appreciate you. Next is our Navy, Mr. Howell.
Yeah, good morning. No Navy update this month.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Perryman, anything from the airport?
A couple things. One, I'm bringing from the State Department of Aviation. They have published their statewide economic impact of aviation and airports in the Commonwealth. About $42 billion of economic impact from the airports. 3.1 billion of that is from our 6 regional airports here in Hampton Roads. So when you take out Dulles and National, which contribute the highest number, we're the 3rd highest behind them in the region. Yesterday was a rather fun event. We had the grand opening of our international arrivals facility. Appreciate those who were able to attend. If you haven't seen it, it's a great facility. Customs and Border Protection are extremely excited about moving in their new facility so that we can accommodate the international traffic that is growing.
Along with that, this past week, the Hampton Roads Transatlantic Air Service Coalition was officially formed with the Alliance's vote on Tuesday, and along with the executive roundtable at the end of last year. So we are going to be pushing hard for that transatlantic service. We now have all the pieces in place to be pursuing that. So that's it.
Thank you. Looking forward to some good things. Thank you for what you're doing as well, sir. Mr. Crum, I'm going to ask you to just take us on for the rest of the agenda items.
Fantastic. So included in your agenda are our 3-month tentative schedule. As a reminder, we do have a PPO board meeting in March. And again, if you could please work with your alternates to be certain that we have a quorum for that important meeting. You'll see some minutes for our advisory committee meetings. One item to mention for your information, our draft 27 through 2030 Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP, our project list is out for public comments. Those are live, active projects, so really encourage you to take a look at that. And if you have any public comments, please share those through our staff, and we'd be happy to consider those. The final thing that I'd mention, Mr. Chairman, is our HRPDC meeting will start at 12:30. Some of the things on the PDC meeting today, you'll get to hear about an update on our regional fiber network from Marcellus Nixon, the executive director of our broadband authority. Whitney Catchmark will be given an update on our climate pollution reduction plan and some of those efforts. Our entire PDC staff team will join me, and we're going to give an A to Z update on all things General Assembly. So transportation was a small piece of that, but in about 45 minutes, we're going to be talking about a number of local and regional issues. So hope you can stay for that. Until then, lunch is going to be served over behind the reception area. Just follow Chris. He'll point you in the right direction there. So, Mr. Perriman, looks like Chris might be practicing for that airport job. That's all I have.
Thank you. We will adjourn. It is 11:54.
For an airport job, I'll retire at 30.